Hey guys, this is the Citizen Promaster Tough, which is a really interesting watch for reasons we'll get into. I bought it mainly because I was actually missing the feel of, a nice steel watch and a steel bracelet. And recently, I'd been wearing a lot of things um, on straps. Some watches just work well and look better, feel better on bracelet, and that's the kind of watch that I was looking for, and the reason I got this. This, just so you know, it's a hefty watch. I That's the one thing that surprised me the most. Um, Based on the photos, it looked, you can't really tell the weight, obviously, but this ended up being a kind of a um, heavier watch than I expected. So that's one thing to remember. At the same time, it's a really thin watch too. So if you see there, you see how it really, because of the thinness, it drapes down perfectly and curves to the shape of my wrist. So despite the long lug to lug of 51, I believe, it works well on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. I typically would not wear a watch with that long of lug to lug, and this is a 42 diameter watch. Last measurement with a uh, lug width of 22 millimeters. So that also contributes to the weight because the bracelet is thicker and heavier. There's no taper here. It's a thick looking bracelet. We'll talk a little bit more about the bracelet, but let me first take it off wrist and give you a closer look. So the reasons I like this design, first of all, it's got that really nice sector dial design that I think always lends a really utilitarian look to watches. I don't know, something about the sector design makes it more military spec like, in my opinion. And it makes the whole thing, it's a really legible watch, as you can see, because the everything just lines up, right? The hour hand follows the inner circle, and then the minute hand the outer circle. So that's something that works really well. And I think it's a this being a bezel-less watch. Instead, it has a thick steel rim, which again add you know works with that entire tool aesthetic, and further adding to that really rugged, tough feel of this watch is the coating that they use here. It's similar to Seiko's DeaShield coating. Citizen refers to it as super titanium, but don't be fooled. This is 316L stainless steel. It's just the scratch resistant coating that they've applied here. It does have a slightly dirty appearance the way that titanium does, but not quite, right? So it will pick up, smudges, and it'll have slight imperfections that you'll have to wipe off from time to time. But that's part of, the overall look and feel of this watch. It's not meant to be polished and gleaming and flashy. Um, it'll be hard to pick up here, but when you look at the dial, the the solar panels are like on the inside, and um, it does give it a slightly more brown dial color as compared to the outside. So that's not ideal, but that's unavoidable. Overall, it still looks like a pretty black watch. We talked about the wearability a little bit with the shape. Let me just give you a side view just to show you how much this curves. You can really appreciate it when you look at it like this. I think the angle they hit right. So it's not too much, it's not too little. And look at how thin the watch is, right? So that makes the whole thing really wearable. What makes this the Citizen Promaster tough, and what makes this tough, as the name implies, is particularly the case design, which has no case back. It's a single solid piece of steel which is called a monocoque, case construction, and that supposedly makes this case more rigid. And I think this design and this concept works well with a solar powered watch because, in my mind, if you have a automatic movement and you bang it around, I feel like that would be more prone to, to getting messed up than solar quartz movement inside, right? And this thin casing. So I think that whole thing of solar plus the single, metal case construction, which makes this really rigid, it works really well, and then works well with the utilitarian dial layout. The crown is really easy to operate, screws on very smoothly, no catch. Of course, it's solar. Let me talk about the bracelet a little bit because this is one of the downsides of this watch. I love this design, link design of the bracelet. It's what you see in like ball engineer watches. So it's essentially H-link, but the center links are beveled and bulge out. So yeah, so it has a unique appearance that I really like. The only issue is that it has a lot of wiggle. So you'll notice it right away when you open up this watch. It has a lot of wiggle, so it's gonna have a lot of rattle as a consequence. And also I noticed sometimes because of that, because of the slight gaps you have, it does catch hairs sometimes, but overall it's still, a very wearable piece. Yeah, here it is back on the wrist again. Again, despite the size, I think a larger 42 mil watch, I've noticed, it's just much more legible and enjoyable to read. And so I've been recently preferring a larger watch like that, even though I usually have gravitated towards 40 and 39 mil watches. So that's something to know. If you're someone who generally prefers smaller watches, I think this will still work perfectly fine. So I wouldn't worry so much about that lug to lug or the dial size. What I would caution you on, again, just to reiterate the point I made in the beginning, is the weight of the watch. You're gonna definitely feel this. It does kind of help that it's thinner and really hugs your arm, but you're gonna feel this, and if it slides down to the end of your wrist, it could be a little uncomfortable because of how heavy it's hanging on your wrist. I didn't mention the one other downside is these are fairly big links, right? So it's actually, it might be tough to get an ideal fit, and the micro adjust here, you get 3. It's not that that's not enough, but the spacing is too wide. Really, micro adjust should be, I've said this about so many different watches, they should be smaller spaced really to get that optimal fit. This is one of those that either could feel a little too loose or a little too tight, and there's no in between. And that's not just this, it's a lot of watches. So that's something that, if I were designing watches, I would really prioritize and, make sure that's solved, because wearability is everything. Yeah, and real quick again about the price of this and where you can get it. This retails, again, it's discontinued on Citizen site, but the retail price is $500. I think you're getting really good value for money. But you actually are, this is usually sold in stores for a lot less. I actually got this for under $250, and it was with tax $250 flat. So I think for that money, there's no question about it. This is an awesome watch. One other thing I'll mention is I don't have as much experience with solar watches. I've always preferred automatics, and I noticed, so there are pros and cons, obviously. When I took this out of the box, it wasn't fully charged, so it was really annoying, actually, especially in winter. When you have less sunlight, it's really annoying to get this fully charged. I know, the idea of having a solar watch is Like, you don't have to worry about it, but I was actually worrying about it more because it kept going into the low power zone. Um, and I really had to leave it in really bright light, like by the window for a day for it to be charged. And that was kind of annoying, like finding that unless you live in an environment where you're always out, like in the light. But in the city, you know, it was a little difficult. Whereas like an automatic, you just know on the spot you can wind it up and you know it's gonna work, you know it's reliable. So that's what I found I didn't like about, you know, solar watches. But now that it's, you know, fully charged and running, it's great. You know, it's super accurate, more accurate than the automatics I have with Swiss movements. So yeah, I think that in the end, you know, it really depends on what you want, but it's nice to have something different in the collection. So that's where this fits in for me. So I hope you guys found this review helpful, and I'll see you in the next videos. Bye.